On Storytime Audio, we bring you captivating stories that touch your heart and soul. Today, we are thrilled to present The Journey of Healing, Overcoming the Shadows of a Cheating Wife. In this heartfelt tale, we follow the emotional journey of Leo, a man living in New York, as he grapples with the painful aftermath of his divorce. Leo's life takes an unexpected turn when he sees a photo of his ex-wife, Maya, with her new fiancé, reopening old wounds and propelling him towards a path of self-discovery and change. Join us as we delve into Leo's struggles and triumphs, his encounters with friends and colleagues, and his quest for a new beginning with Clara, a colleague who brings hope and love back into his life. This story of heartbreak, resilience, and the power of new beginnings will keep you captivated from start to finish. So, sit back, relax, and let us take you on a journey of healing and rediscovery with The Journey of Healing, Overcoming the Shadows of a Cheating Wife, only on Storytime Audio. Leo turned in his chair and looked out the window of his office in New York. It was a bright spring morning in 2023, and he couldn't help but marvel at the dazzling array of colors from the blooming flowers and budding trees. The city seemed to be waking up from its winter slumber, and the energy was infectious. Sighing, Leo walked back to his desk and opened the newspaper. It was still early, and he thought he would relax with the paper and finish his coffee before diving into the day's work. He read through the front page, finding nothing of particular interest. As he turned to the society section, Leo smiled at the trivialities that often filled this part of the paper. He was about to toss it aside when a picture below the fold caught his eye. It showed Maya, his ex-wife, standing with a tall, solid man. The caption read, "British aristocrat and local woman announce their engagement." Leo sat dazed in shock. The newspaper slipped from his hands, and a terrible sense of loss gripped his heart once again. He dropped his head into his hands, letting the tears fall. It had been 3 years since their divorce, but seeing Maya smiling in that photograph reopened old wounds. After a few moments, he looked down at the paper on the floor, wondering if he had imagined it. No, the image hadn't changed. The picture was indeed of Maya and a tall man, smiling at the camera. It was likely taken at a party where the engagement was announced, just as the caption suggested. Despite the depression and stress of the divorce, Maya still looked radiant, and it seemed she was moving on with her life. Meanwhile, Leo had thrown himself into work and avoided socializing for longer than he cared to remember. Leaning back in his chair, Leo ran a hand through his hair, now streaked with more gray than 3 years ago, and sighed deeply. This news was a shock to his system. While he didn't believe they could get back together after everything they'd been through, he had always harbored a faint hope for reconciliation. Apparently, he was wrong. Maya seemed to have withdrawn into herself and found a way to move forward, while he continued to procrastinate and feel sorry for himself. Determined not to wallow in self-pity any longer, Leo decided it was time for a change, a long overdue change in his life. He picked up the newspaper and tossed it into the basket by his desk. He finished the last sip of his coffee and prepared to start his day. The first thing he needed to do was talk to his assistant and secretary. It was time to start delegating more and trusting his team to do the work he was paying them to do. He also needed to pull his head out of his ass and get back to the way he used to be. It took Leo a while to redistribute the workload among his employees, ensuring they were working at their best and starting to cut back on his own time in the office. He was proud of his employees and how they handled the new tasks he assigned them. They were smart, well-trained people, and he realized he had underutilized them because he had failed to trust them fully. That would not happen again. Leo vowed that from now on, his team would be intimately involved in the day-to-day affairs of the office, and he would lead and direct them as he should have from the beginning. A few weeks after this personal and professional rebirth, Leo was sitting in the cafeteria of the medical center where he worked and noticed his old friend Tom Green walk in. Tom had been married to Sophia, Maya's sister, for 2 years. God, has it really been that long? Leo thought as he waved Tom over to join him at his table. "Tom, how are you doing? How's Sophia?" Leo asked, genuinely interested. "Fine, Leo. Sophia's fine, thanks. How are you doing?" Tom replied, a look of concern crossing his face. "I'm doing fine, Tom. Better now that I've finally gotten my head in order." "I'm sure you know what I mean," Leo said, a small, wry smile playing on his lips. "Unfortunately, I do. I've been worried about you." You've worked too long and too hard. You don't want another heart attack, do you? Tom said, his tone serious. No, Tom, one is enough, thank you. I've been following the doctor's orders for the most part, except for the long hours, of course. But that's changed now too, so I'm sure he'll be thrilled at my next checkup. Leo responded, feeling a weight lift off his shoulders as he spoke. I'm glad to hear that, Leo. Sophia and I have been worried about you, Tom said, his expression softening. Really? Leo said, his smile widening. I was under the impression that I wasn't exactly on Sophia's list of people to worry about, especially after the divorce. Tom had the decency to look embarrassed. You know, Leo, Sophia and Maya are very close. She's mellowed over the years and realizes that Maya was more to blame than you. That's very nice of her since Maya was the one with another guy between her legs, Leo said bitterly. I'm sorry, Tom, but even after all this time, her cheating on me after everything I've done to support her really pisses me off. I can understand that, Leo. But I wish you'd talk to someone about it. It's not good for your health to hold a grudge for so long, Tom suggested gently. Is that what you think I'm doing? Holding a grudge? Leo asked, genuinely curious. Well, I don't hold a grudge against Maya. I rarely think about her now. It's only at times like this, when the conversation turns to her, that old memories come up. I loved her, Tom. I loved her with all my heart. I thought we'd grow old together. When it turned out that her physical problems prevented us from having children, I was as devastated as she was. But you'd never know it from her or Sophia. I was a dutiful, loving husband to her for 12 years while she was in therapy and then as she drifted further and further away from me each day. Did I tell you she cursed me for trying to throw her a 40th birthday party? Tom's eyes went wide at this remark. No, I didn't know that. Oh yes, I was stunned to say the least. But I apologized and never brought it up again. But the coldness in our marriage only intensified. We were two people living in the same house, but there was really no marriage. We could have been brother and sister for all the closeness we had shared over the past 2 years. I tried everything I could to get her back, Tom, I really did. But what can one person do when the other doesn't even try? I doubted the viability of the marriage even before the affair. So the fact that I caught her with another man was just the latest in a long line of events that should have told me the marriage was over. My only regret is that it took a heart attack to wake me up from the stupor I'd been in for years, Leo said, his shoulders slumping as he stared down at his plate. I'm so sorry, Leo. I didn't know, Tom said, putting a hand on his friend's shoulder and squeezing it gently. Nobody knows unless I tell them myself. I didn't want to talk about it, and I still don't. But I thought you deserved to hear the other side of the story since I'm sure you've heard Maya's side of the story, Leo explained. I admit I have heard it, but being in my position, I knew there had to be more to it than what I had heard. After all, there are two sides to every argument. I hope you don't get upset, but I have to ask, do you still love her? Tom asked cautiously. Leo paused and took a deep breath, letting the air out through his teeth before answering. I've been asking myself the same question. Do I still love her? To be honest, I would have to say that yes, I still love her. We had some good years together, it just wasn't enough, and the bad years outweighed the good ones. The thing is, while I still love her, I'm not in love with her, you know? I love her as a friend who has been away for a long time. I think back to the good times we had and sometimes wonder what happened. But she's been gone so long that any feelings of being in love with her are long gone. Besides, it doesn't really matter because she's engaged now, isn't she? I remember seeing an announcement in the paper a while back. Tom smiled, wondering if Leo's information would make him reconsider his position on Maya. Well, Leo, I've got news on that score. Maya has changed her mind. She was fascinated by the guy, but once it came down to business and she realized she was going to live in England, she backed out. Sophia questioned her sanity. The guy was rich, after all, and he did seem to have a crush on Maya. He was devastated when she called off the engagement but got over it. Now he's back in England. Well, that changes everything, doesn't it? Thought Leo. Why should it? Just because she's not engaged and that was the trigger that threw me off balance doesn't change the fact that I'm sick of dealing with Maya and her depression and all that crap all these years. She may regret the affair and may even be normal now, but how long will that last? Last time she was in therapy and on medication and she seemed normal then too, and look what happened. Nope, sorry. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt. Leo realized he'd been silent for too long and catching his friend's gaze replied, "I'm sorry to hear that, Tom. Maya deserves to be happy, and I was glad to hear she's moving on with her life. I hope she doesn't give up. She's a good woman if she's really healthy, and she deserves happiness just like everyone else. I was hoping you'd want to resume a relationship with her when you found out she wasn't going to marry," Tom said, his voice tinged with disappointment. "No, I'm sorry, Tom, but sometimes love just isn't enough. I've used up all my love for her over the last 12 years of our marriage. Besides, despite what she may say or even believe, she couldn't have loved me in those last few years either. If she had loved me, she would have asked for a divorce before she even decided to have an affair," Leo said firmly. Tom was shocked by Leo's statement. "How can you say that, Leo? Maya has always loved you. Come on, Tom, you're the psychiatrist. I may be stubborn, but I don't see any love for your husband in taking another man into your bed, especially into your bed in a house you share together. The least she could have done was take the guy to a hotel. No, she didn't even bother to show that kind of concern for me. She didn't care that she brought a man into our home. She didn't care that she brought a man into our bed. She didn't care that there was even the slightest possibility that I might come home and find her in the arms of another man. No, that's not love. That is total disregard for the feelings of the man you are married to. It's indifference to his feelings. It's a perverse pleasure in the chance of being caught, however small that chance may be, and throwing the affair in your husband's face. It suggests that she weighed the chances of being caught and the consequences and deemed them so small or irrelevant that she didn't care if she got caught. I think it shows such disrespect for me that there is no love in that. I'm sorry, Tom, but it's all over between me and Maya," Leo said, his voice calm but firm. Tom leaned back in his chair, stunned. It was obvious that Leo had thought about this for a long time and had come to some interesting and probably correct conclusions. He had counseled enough couples with marital problems to understand how a man could come to the conclusion that there was no love for him if his wife behaved this way. Given that Leo had supported his wife through all her problems and illnesses for years, it was no surprise that he felt that way. He looked at his friend sympathetically. "I understand what you're saying, Leo, and I can see that you've given it a lot of thought. If anything, I agree with you in principle. The actions you describe are certainly not an expression of love for your spouse. I think there are some extenuating circumstances in Maya's case, but it's up to you to decide whether those circumstances can outweigh the pain you obviously felt over her betrayal. That's the thing, Tom. Even though things weren't great in our marriage and haven't been for years, I never thought she would have an affair. I didn't think she was even interested in sex, for heaven's sake. But even with all the animosity between us, I never thought she would hurt me this much. Seeing her in the arms of another man killed all my love for her and certainly any chance of forgetting what had happened. Throughout all these years, I had never been tempted to seek solace outside of our marriage. I loved Maya too much for that, and I took my vows seriously. In sickness and in health, Maya needed me, and I was there for her. Even when she seemed normal, I was there for her, hoping that the sweet, loving, fun-loving woman I married would come back to me. But it never happened. Even in my darkest hours, I never thought about cheating on her, and yet I had opportunities. I couldn't do it. It was wrong, damn it. It was just wrong. Leo's voice broke, and he collapsed in his chair, his emotions exhausted. I'm so sorry, Leo. I'm glad you told me about all this. It sheds light on some questions I've had for a long time. You know that Maya has been seeing me since the divorce, and I certainly can't discuss what we talked about, but if it helps, Maya doesn't know why she did it, although I have a few theories. Maya loved you and still does, but she realizes she hurt you. But I don't think even she knows to what depth, Tom said sympathetically. I won't bring up Maya again, Leo, but I had to try. Sophia asked me to. She wanted you to know how Maya felt and continues to feel. Your decision not to talk to her or open her messages made Sophia think you were being stubborn, Tom said, raising his hands in a placating gesture. I know you're not, Leo. I know you, and you're not a stubborn man. And after what you told me, I'm more convinced of that than ever. I really wish things had worked out differently for you and Maya, but I understand your position. You won't hear anything more from me on that subject, Tom promised. Thanks for listening, Tom. This is the first time I've talked about it with someone at such length. It makes me feel a lot better now that I've laid it all out in the open, Leo said, a weight lifting off his shoulders. Tom smiled at his friend and said, "No problem. What are friends for? By the way, my bill is coming in the mail." Leo chuckled. "You know, considering how good I'm feeling right now, I think I'll pay it." He looked down at his plate and picked up his fork, finding that he was hungry after all. The conversation with Tom had not only calmed Leo down but also made him reflect on his decision not to talk or make contact with Maya. He had avoided her, trying to protect himself. He knew that if he confronted her, he would say something he would regret later, and he didn't want to do that. He also didn't want her to justify her behavior. Who cares what the underlying reasons were for cheating? The important thing is that she made a conscious decision to bring a man into their home and into their bed. As much as he liked Tom as a person, listening to the usual excuses of a psychopath would be unpleasant for him. To listen to her explanations or worse, judging from Tom's words, there wasn't a single reason she could give that would open up all the old wounds and make him relive the incident again, which he would never want to do. So, to save his heart, he cut off all contact with Maya except through their lawyers. That, of course, was 3 years ago. Maybe it was time to finally talk to Maya. Maybe it was, but he would have to think about it for a while longer. A couple of weeks later, Leo sat in an inconspicuous booth at his favorite new restaurant, waiting for his ex-wife. For the 1000th time since he had left her a message on her voicemail at work, asking her to meet him tonight, he questioned the reasonableness of the dinner invitation. Did he really want to meet her face to face in such a setting? Wouldn't he thereby send the wrong signal? And would she come at all? Just as he was pondering the what if scenarios, the hostess invited Maya to the table. As befitted a gentleman, he stood up to greet her. "Maya, thank you for coming. I hope you had no trouble finding the place," he said, pulling out a chair for her. Settling into the chair, Maya blushed, remembering how much she had enjoyed Leo's company and how much she had missed him over the years. "You're welcome, Leo. Thanks for inviting me. It's a very nice place." "Is it new?" "Yes, it opened a year or so ago. I like it a lot. They have great food, and the tables aren't so close together that you can't have a private conversation without hearing every word the other diners say," Leo replied, trying to ease the tension. Maya wondered if Leo wanted to say something private to her. It didn't matter at the moment. Maya had her own agenda for this meeting as well, and she decided to get straight to the point. "Leo, I'm so sorry," Maya began, but Leo interrupted. "Maya, please, that's not why I asked you here. I've had a lot of time to think things over, and I know you're sorry. The woman I married would be like that. And while there have been many changes in our lives, I don't think you've changed that much," Leo said, trying to keep the conversation on track. "Thanks for your confidence, Leo. You're right, we've both changed a lot, both before and after the divorce. I want you to know that I take full responsibility for everything that has happened," Maya said sincerely. "I really appreciate that, Maya. I want you to know that I don't want or need an explanation for the incident that led to our divorce. I've come to terms with it, and I don't want to open old wounds. I want to talk about why I invited you here tonight. I still feel I owe you an explanation," Leo said, taking a calming breath before continuing. "Maya, I don't need an explanation. This is all water under the bridge, and we both need to put it behind us. We can't keep living in the past, which is why I invited you here today. I want us to be friends again," Leo said, his voice filled with hope. Maya's heart raced at Leo's last word. "Friends? What do you mean, friends?" "Maya, nothing more than that. We've had many years together, and while they haven't all been good, some of them have been good. There's no reason why two adults with a history like ours can't be friends. It may have been wrong of me to cut you off, but I can't fix that. All I can do is make things right now and in the future. Can we be friends again, Maya?" Leo asked, sitting back and waiting for her answer. Maya lowered her gaze to her plate and then looked at Leo again through her lashes. Tears stood in her eyes, and her throat constricted. She never thought Leo would ever say those words to her. She was sure she'd lost all chance of communicating with him because of her actions, and now it was beyond her to expect to be friends with him. She swallowed twice to clear her throat before she spoke. "I'd really like that, Leo. I really wish we could be friends. I hoped for it, but I never thought it would come true. I'm so glad you decided to make me this offer. I'm stunned but honored," Maya said, her voice filled with emotion. "I guess I'm more of an ogre than I thought, if that's what you think. I never stopped loving you, Maya. I'm just not in love with you. I hope we can start a new relationship as good friends," Leo said, smiling at her. I appreciate your feelings, Leo, and even though my actions don't agree with my feelings, I've never stopped loving you either. I want to start a new relationship with you too, as very good friends, Maya said, her voice softening. Leo saw that Maya had already poured the wine before she arrived and raised his glass to make a toast. To good friends, he said quietly, looking into her eyes. To good friends, Maya replied with feeling, and they clinked their glasses, taking a sip of wine each. They picked up their menus and began their conversation. Even though they hadn't spoken to each other in 3 years, the conversation soon turned to pleasant chatter as it had before all the trouble in their marriage. All too soon, dinner and dessert were finished, and it was time to head home. Leo pushed Maya's chair back and took her hand. I had a really good time, Maya. I have to admit I was pretty scared. I thought tonight was going to be awkward, and it was for a while, but once we got settled in, it was almost like old times. Can I walk you to your car? Maya smiled and squeezed Leo's hand before releasing it. Thank you, Leo. I was worried about how the evening would go too, but I had to give it a try, and I'm very glad I did. Thank you for the offer of friendship, Leo. I will always treasure the offer as I will treasure your friendship. Leo walked Maya to her car and waited for her to start the engine before he turned and walked to his car, thinking that the evening had gone well. Leo sat in his chair at the board meeting, staring into space. The CFO, Paul Brambley, was retiring and was talking about his years at the medical center. Leo really liked Paul, but he was always a bit of a talker, and today he was even more so. He talked endlessly about his career and all the wonderful people he had worked with. Paul had just reached the 1990s, and Leo was bored to tears. He tried his best to be attentive, and thanks to the CEO, Henry Corgan, Paul sped up his walk down memory lane, completing it in record time. Everyone thanked Paul for all he had done for them, and he sat back down to a standing ovation from his coworkers. The remaining item on the agenda was the introduction of Paul's replacement. Although Leo had participated in the initial interviews and the second and third interviews with the candidates, he was unaware of the final selection. Henry wanted to keep that part of the process for himself after reviewing his staff's recommendations. All 3 candidates had outstanding qualifications. One of them even held the position of CFO at a small regional medical center in the state. From the way Leo had evaluated these candidates, he had no qualms about any of them, so he had no concerns about Henry's choice. However, if asked for his personal opinion, he would have voted for the only woman in that group, Clara Can. Clara's qualifications were as good as the other applicants, and she conducted the interview well, exuding confidence in herself and her abilities. She had some novel ideas for cost containment, which was always a point of contention in healthcare. What really made Leo hopeful about her becoming the new CFO was her intelligence. She possessed a quick wit that was evident after the last formal interview when they chatted before her next meeting. It had been a long time since Leo had enjoyed talking to a woman so much. Of course, it didn't hurt that Clara was attractive in her own way. She looked to be about his age, between 45 and 50, with dark black hair and a few gray hairs, indicating that her hair color was natural, which was rare for a woman of her years. She was quite tall, an inch or two shorter than him in heels, with a medium but curvaceous figure. What caught his attention, however, was her smile. She smiled easily and often, but she never seemed flippant. At least it seemed to Leo that she would be an excellent choice for their current team. Leo's musings were interrupted by Henry making the announcement they had all been waiting for. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank you all for helping me make the decision to replace Paul. I would also like to thank Paul again for his kind offer to stay on for another month and to be available for counseling for 3 months to help his successor settle into his new role. Paul was gratefully met with a round of applause, after which Henry continued, "While the selection of Paul's replacement was a difficult decision, it was not due to your efforts. It was purely due to the quality of the candidates. I did not want to reject any of them, however, the choice had to be made. So without further ado, let me introduce you to our new CFO, Clara Can." Clara entered from the connecting office, looking around with a mix of excitement and determination. She had really wanted this position, had worked hard to get it, and was now ready to take on the challenge she knew she could handle. She had also wanted to work at Center City Medical Center for a long time. Their reputation as one of the best medical facilities in the state was well known, and the best in the business worked here. Clara believed she was the best in her field, so she knew she could make a difference. To be honest with herself, she was glad to be working with Leo. Out of all the people who interviewed her, she liked him the best. She also found him to be a very attractive man, quick-witted, and very pleasant to be around. Oh yes, she was going to enjoy this job immensely. Thank you, Henry. I just want to say that I appreciate your choice as the new CFO, and I look forward to working with Paul and learning all I can from him, Clara said, looking directly at Paul. Paul, I want to thank you in advance for your time, and I promise to dig into your brain so hard that you'll have a headache when we're done. Paul and the rest of the staff chuckled at her statement. She then sat down in the chair Henry pointed out to her and made herself comfortable. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to remind you that Paul's retirement party will be held Friday night at the Hilton at 8 o'clock. It is, of course, formal in nature, so get out your best outfits and be ready for an evening of dinner and dancing. The meeting is adjourned, Henry announced. The staff began to leave the room, not forgetting to shake hands and congratulate Clara on her new position. Leo kept to the sidelines to be the last to leave. Congratulations, Clara. Welcome to the team. I look forward to working with you. Please feel free to reach out to me anytime. My door is always open, Leo said sincerely. Thank you, Leo. I will. I'm sure we'll work closely together in the future, and I look forward to it, Clara replied, smiling and looking Leo in the eye. Me too, Clara, Leo said, feeling a little nervous but immediately continuing. If you don't think I'm getting too ahead of myself, is it okay if I walk you to the retirement party? I mean, you're new in town and all. Wow, he doesn't waste any time, does he? Thought Clara. If it were anyone else, I'd probably say no, but I have a good feeling about Leo. I wouldn't mind seeing what he's up to. Thank you, Leo. I'd be delighted. I haven't had a chance to orient myself, so your offer is much appreciated, Clara said graciously. Great. We can finalize plans later this week. If you'll excuse me, I have a meeting. I'll talk to you later, Leo said, leaving the room with a smile. Paul approached Clara and said, Leo is a great guy. He will be a great help to you in the future. Why don't we head over to my office, your office, and we can get to know the staff? Clara smiled and patted Paul on the arm. Paul, this is still your office and your staff, and I don't want you to think otherwise. I'm really looking forward to working with you over the next few weeks. You have a great reputation in our field, and I want to do my best to learn what you know so I can improve myself. Just do your best to make this medical center the best it can be and do it with integrity, and you will succeed. I've always done that, and it's served me well, as I'm sure it has you, Paul said warmly. With those words, they headed to Paul's office for her first meeting with the new staff. The retirement party was a great success. Paul and his wife enjoyed the attention and praise of their coworkers throughout the evening, and there wasn't a dry eye in the house when Paul thanked everyone for all the wonderful years they had spent together. Thanks to his investments, Paul and his wife were going on a world cruise next month, something they had been planning to do for years. Although he would be available for counseling upon his return if Clara needed it, Paul didn't think that would happen. In the week they had worked together, she had taken on the job like no one else he had ever known, and he planned to step back from Monday and let her take the lead. The transition would be easy, and he made sure Henry knew it. Henry seemed pleased with the information and noted that his intuition had never failed him yet. Henry noticed that his new CFO and COO got along well with each other. He saw them talking and laughing easily throughout the evening. He saw them dancing together, although Clara, like Leo, danced with other members of the team. It was nice to see his staff interacting well with each other in a social setting like this. However, he wasn't a fool either. He could see a spark budding between Clara and Leo. Clara was an attractive woman that any man would be proud to know. Leo was a handsome man, that too was obvious, and they made a lovely couple. In truth, he was pleased to see Leo as happy as he seemed this evening. Since the divorce, Leo had become a reserved man. He was no longer the Leo he had known. After the divorce, he was a reserved man, unwilling to socialize with others outside of a business setting. Instead of socializing, Leo was working more and more, although that had changed recently. Henry had even tried to get Leo interested in social activities by making sure that the right ladies were present at corporate events, but no one seemed to be able to interest Leo. Then, 5 or 6 months ago, Leo seemed to come out of his stupor and began to gradually return to his previous lifestyle. A thorough investigation revealed that Leo and his ex-wife had settled their differences and agreed to be friends again. Although he, like Leo's other friends, had hoped that Leo and Maya would reconcile, it didn't happen. Although Henry guessed why that was the case, he had never pushed for it. And so, he was glad that the two had settled on friendship rather than the stalemate they had been living in for the past 3 years. While he wasn't sure Clara would be a good fit for Leo, he wouldn't know for a long time as he would need to get to know her much better to make that decision. He was pleased to see that Leo was showing some interest in the woman. He would have to keep an eye on the developing romance to make sure that if things went wrong, it wouldn't affect his team. He would hate to lose one or both of them because they could no longer work together. However, now was too soon for such concerns because escorting a woman to a party and a few dances was not yet an affair. Clara smiled at her escort as they approached her apartment. "Thank you for escorting me to the party tonight, Leo. I had a really good time. You're a good dancer." "Thank you, Clara. You too. You really made a sensation among your peers tonight. I kept hearing good words about you from everyone." "You didn't act like the new girl," Leo said, grinning. "I don't know what it is, but I feel so comfortable here with my staff and the other members of Henry's staff. It feels like we've been working together for years. The husbands and wives of the other officers are also so kind and helpful. It feels like one big family," Clara replied. Henry likes to maintain that attitude, and he is very careful to select people who fit that model. "I think it makes for a much better work environment. That's not to say that Henry can't be harsh when he feels the need, but I think he feels that need less often than many CEOs because he picks people carefully," Leo explained. They were approaching her door, and Leo stepped back slightly. "Well, here we are. Thank you for allowing me to accompany you tonight, Clara. I'll see you on Monday." Clara put the key in the lock and opened the door slightly. "No, Leo, thank you. I've enjoyed myself immensely, and I've enjoyed your company. See you Monday." With those words, she entered her apartment and closed the door. Months passed, and Clara settled into the role of CFO as easily as Paul had predicted. She was able to build on Paul's foundation and refine it, making many policy changes that increased the corporation's profits while maintaining the high standards the company was known for. During this time, Clara and Leo became friends through a close working relationship. They ate lunch together a couple of times a week and had dinner together after working long hours. Leo and Clara mostly talked about work topics, but like many people in their situation, personal information gradually crept into their conversations. Clara learned that Leo had been divorced for almost 4 years, and Leo revealed that she had been divorced for 10 years. Clara was surprised to learn that Leo did not have children. Her husband did not want them, and although mentioning that she did not have children, did not elaborate. As Leo remarked during her interview, they had a lot in common. He felt very comfortable in her presence. He didn't consider himself in love with her, not like he had been with Maya when they first met, but he was very happy to be with her and looked forward to seeing her when they were apart. Clara, on the other hand, wondered what was holding Leo back. He seemed to be happy with her and enjoyed her company as much as she enjoyed his, but he never took it to the next level. They didn't have dates, they met as friends. At first, she thought he might not want a coworker for fear that if things didn't work out between them, it might affect their work. She wondered if there was a company rule against marital relationships. She approached the HR director, who assured her that there was no such policy. After some time talking to colleagues, she learned that Dr. Tom Green was as close to Leo as anyone and was the person to go to for clarification about Leo's situation. One day, she saw Tom in the cafeteria and, noticing he was alone, made her way to his table. "Dr. Green, may I sit down?" Clara asked politely. Tom looked up and saw the tall brunette he had seen with his friend Leo standing at his table. He stood up and pointed to a vacant chair. "Please join me, Clara. I don't think I've ever had the pleasure. I see you know who I am." "I am honored, Clara. Your reputation precedes you. Everyone is talking about the new CFO and her innovative ideas," Tom said warmly. Clara smiled shyly. "Please call me Clara. I didn't realize my fame was so widespread, but I am very pleased to hear it. I like to be recognized for my efforts. I hope I don't seem too narcissistic." "No, and please call me Tom. To paraphrase Walter Brennan from the old TV show, no bluster, just the facts. You have a lot to be proud of, Clara, and you deserve credit if my opinion means anything," Tom replied. "I remember Walter Brennan, but I don't think I ever saw the show." "I appreciate your sentiments, Tom. Everyone here is so nice, and you're upholding the tradition," Clara said, her smile widening. Tom knew this meeting was more than a mutual admiration society and decided to cut to the chase. While it was fun to compliment each other like that, I have a feeling you wanted to talk about something else. Am I right, Clara? Clara had the grace to look embarrassed. Was I really that obvious, Tom? I did want to talk to you about something, or rather, someone. Leo Meter. I heard you're his best friend, so I was wondering if there was anything you could tell me. I'll do what I can, but some things I can't talk about because of doctor-patient confidentiality, Tom said cautiously. Clara raised an eyebrow upon hearing this information. Leo is a patient? No, his ex-wife Maya. But I have a feeling that what you want to know may include information that concerns Maya, and I can't speak to specifics in that area, Tom explained. I completely understand, Tom. Since you know why I'm here and what I'm interested in, I'll just start. I like Leo, but he seems to be holding back. We're good friends, at least I think we are, but I'd like to be more than friends, and he doesn't say no, but he doesn't respond to my signals to move forward. Could you shed some light on that? Clara asked, her voice tinged with concern. Tom paused to digest Clara's comments. He had to proceed with caution. While he wanted Leo to find someone new since reconciliation with Maya was out of the question, he didn't want to tell tales out of school. I'm sorry, Clara, if it seems like I don't want to answer, but this is a very touchy subject. Leo is one of my best friends, but so is his ex-wife. I don't want to offend either of them, and what you want to know could be offensive in the wrong context. Before we go any further, I want you to promise me that nothing we've talked about today will be repeated to anyone, not even Leo, Tom said firmly. Clara reached out and patted Tom's arm in solidarity. I understand, Tom, and I will never divulge anything you tell me in confidence. Of course, I'd appreciate any information you could give me, but I don't want you to feel uncomfortable if you need to keep quiet about something. That's not a problem. Okay, then. I think Leo doesn't want to get too serious with any woman, not just you, because he still has feelings for his ex-wife that he can't put behind him. He is not in love with her, he told me this in person. But they were married for 20 years, and he did love her. Feelings like that take time to get over. There were some problems in the marriage that led to the divorce, but they came so suddenly that Leo didn't have time to get used to the idea that he wasn't married to Maya. For the first 3 years after the divorce, he was a workaholic, shutting himself off from every social activity he could. It wasn't until recently, in the last 6 months or so, shortly before you joined the company, that Leo and Maya actually spoke to each other. They've agreed to remain friends, and for the most part, it's been going well for both of them. So, to put it in those terms, Leo has only been divorced for the last 6 months and probably isn't ready or even eager for a new relationship, Tom explained. I see. That certainly clears up some of the points I was confused about. Leo's actions make a lot more sense now. When he mentioned that he had been divorced for almost 4 years, I assumed that he had already come to terms with it, or at least almost. He must have really loved his ex, right? Clara asked, her curiosity piqued. Yes, he did. They were one of the happiest couples I've ever known for the first 8 years of their marriage. The problems started gradually, but Leo, who believed in the sanctity of marriage, never gave up. There were ups and downs over the next 12 years, more than in many other marriages, but Leo was steadfast and worked to make the marriage better. I don't want to say it was all Maya's fault. She had and has issues that I can't go into, but Leo loved Maya so much that he put up with a lot to make his marriage survive. Then came a point that Leo said he couldn't accept, and they divorced. In the end, he still loves her but is not in love with her. They seem to be good friends now, and given the circumstances, this is great progress for them, Tom said thoughtfully. Clara pondered what she had been told. Leo's actions, or rather inactions, made a lot more sense. Tom had reassured her on a number of issues, chief among them the feeling that Leo was no more interested in her than he was in her as a friend. She wasn't sure if that was the case, but at least now she knew that Leo probably didn't want to start a new romantic relationship while still going through his emotional divorce. Since she had been divorced for over 10 years and had no interest in any of the guys she had met, she decided to give Leo the time he needed and see how things went. Thank you for the information, Tom. I really appreciate it. I want you to know that I won't say anything to anyone about our conversation, and I want you to know that you've reassured me about Leo. If you don't mind, I would like to have lunch with you again, but not to hear from you about Leo, but as a thank you for what you did today. My treat, Clara said sincerely. Tom smiled broadly. You're spot on, Clara. I may be a married man, but I won't turn down a meal offered by a beautiful woman." Weeks turned into months, and Leo and Clara grew closer as friends. Leo asked Clara to accompany him to many corporate events, so their coworkers decided they were a couple. It was at one such event, a company picnic, that Henry said something that got Leo thinking. "Leo, how are things going with you and Clara? You have no idea how glad I am to see you're interested in someone after all these years," Henry said, a knowing smile on his face. Leo wondered what Henry was talking about, and his confused expression prompted Henry to elaborate. "Come on, Leo, it's no secret. We all know you're partial to Clara. I think that's wonderful. You two make a wonderful couple. Henry, I think you've got it all wrong. Clara and I are good friends, nothing more," Leo replied, feeling a bit defensive. "Leo, it's me you're talking to. I see the way you act around her. Even now, you know exactly where she is. When your gazes meet, your faces light up. I've seen the way she looks at you when you don't notice it, and whether you want to admit it or not, you have that look too, though perhaps to a lesser degree. You're a beautiful couple, and I hope things work out for you. Look, I'll talk to you later. I'm needed in the tent now. It's my turn in the box," Henry said, patting Leo on the shoulder. "Is he really right?" thought Leo. "Am I really doing this?" To test the theory, he scanned the picnic area, looking for Clara, though he seemed to have a sense of where she would be. Finding her, he watched her until he caught her gaze, and just as Henry had said, Clara's face lit up. The smile on her face was more intense than it had been while talking to her friend. If he was honest with himself, he felt the corners of his mouth lift as well, and his heart raced at her attention. "Oh my God, Henry's right. I'm reacting to her the way she's reacting to me. I must be the biggest fool in the world," Leo thought. If Henry was to be believed, and he had no reason not to, everyone but him thought they were a couple. He wondered how long Clara was going to let him wisecrack before she said something. Not wanting to put off for tomorrow what needed to be done today, Leo decided to talk to Clara about her feelings and his own. He headed over to where she was talking to one of her coworkers, a pretty young woman whom Clara was mentoring. "Hello, ladies. Joy, are you enjoying the picnic?" Leo asked, trying to sound casual. "Oh yes, Leo. Clara and I were just talking about how much fun we're having. We're going to participate in the three-legged race today," Joy replied cheerfully. "Then I'll be sure to come cheer you on to victory," Leo said, turning to face Clara. "Clara, may I speak to you privately?" Clara pulled away from Joy, and together they walked to a picnic table away from the crowd. Clara was worried about what Leo might want to talk about. He looked very serious. "Is something wrong, Leo?" Clara asked, her concern evident in her voice. "No, nothing's wrong, Clara. Henry and I were talking, and he brought something to my attention. I don't know how to put it, but I think I've been somewhat ignorant as far as you and I are concerned," Leo began, trying to find the right words. "What do you mean, Leo?" Clara asked, her curiosity piqued. "Well, he congratulated us on being a couple, and I didn't understand what he meant. He kept giving examples that led him to that conclusion, and after we talked, I checked some of the things he said, and damn it, he was right. Clara, I didn't know exactly where you were at the picnic, but I found you pretty quickly because I could almost feel where you were. When our eyes met, your face changed. Your smile grew wider, and your eyes sparkled. I smiled too and felt warmth in my chest from that touch," Leo explained. "Leo, what are you trying to say?" Clara asked, her heart racing. "Clara, am I right? You care for me as much as I care for you, even if I was too thick-headed to realize it?" Leo asked, his voice filled with hope. Clara's heart melted at the love and admiration in Leo's eyes. It looked like it was time for Leo to admit that he had feelings for her. She would have to thank Henry later for the impetus that made it happen. "Yes, Leo, I care for you very much. I've been waiting for you to realize that too, and I'm very glad it finally happened. I didn't feel the need to push you because I wanted to get to know you better as a friend first. As we grew closer, I felt like we were becoming a couple, even if we didn't recognize it. It happened gradually, and I waited patiently for you to realize it," Clara said, her voice filled with emotion. "The man is always the last to know, isn't he? In this case, I guess that's not such a bad thing. So what's next? I suppose a real date would be nice. How about dinner tomorrow night and dancing afterward? How does that sound?" Leo asked, his smile widening. Clara smiled happily. "That would be wonderful. Would 7:30 be okay with you? I need to get a new dress." Works for me. Now, how about we head to the playing field and get you ready for the race? Leo suggested. Leo sat in his den and contemplated his upcoming date. He was looking forward to this evening. It was amazing how easily he had accepted the situation. Just yesterday, he had only seen Clara as a good friend and nothing more. How could he have missed the feelings that now seemed so obvious? Had he become so numb that he was subconsciously drawn to a woman as beautiful as Clara? According to Henry, he had been acting like part of a couple for a long time, although he hadn't realized it. Perhaps Clara snuck in on him so discreetly that any resistance he might have felt was ignored. If someone had asked him yesterday if he was looking for a relationship, he would have confidently said no, he wasn't. He was content with his situation and had no need for romance. He had great friends at work, both male and female, and with his ex-wife, he now had a warm relationship and didn't feel a pressing need for anything more. Now that he thought about it, he really did want more. He'd felt there was something special about Clara ever since they'd first met when she'd interviewed for the position, though he hadn't admitted it to himself at the time. There wasn't one thing about her that attracted him. What attracted him was that Clara was the complete package. They had become great friends, and now that there was a romantic aspect to their relationship, he realized how that could help him. He didn't have to guess what she liked. He knew because they told each other their likes and dislikes. He didn't have to worry about tonight being filled with nervousness about safe topics of conversation because they had already discussed those topics as well as some of the unsafe ones and enjoyed the discussion, even though they didn't always agree with each other. He knew he wanted to be with her when they were apart and was happier than he had ever been in a long time. No, tonight wouldn't be as awkward as a normal first date, especially for a man his age. He hadn't gone on a date in over 20 years, and usually, the thought would have horrified him. But that wasn't the case, as he was going on a date with his girlfriend, and he felt good with her. However, it was the physical aspect of the relationship that bothered him. He hadn't kissed another woman since he had gotten married. What bothered him was the fear of disappointing her out of inexperience. He sincerely hoped it would be like riding a bicycle and everything would work itself out. Since Clara was waiting for him to come around, he planned to mostly follow her lead and take cues from her about what she wanted from him. One thing he knew for sure was that he wasn't ready for physical intimacy with her yet. It would take small steps to get comfortable. He also didn't think Clara would want to jump into bed on the first date. That wasn't her style, so he dismissed the idea as something to consider in the future. Leo pulled up to Clara's house at 7:25 p.m. checking his tie in the mirror. He got out of the car and headed for her door. Taking a deep breath, he checked the flowers in his hand once more and rang the bell. A few seconds later, the door opened, and the sight he saw took his breath away. Clara's hair was swept back and slicked back behind her ear, a hairstyle he had never seen on her before but hoped he would see more often. Then he turned his attention to her dress. The stereotypical little black dress hugged every curve like a lover and ended a few inches above her knees. She wore a simple pearl necklace, earrings, and bracelet to complete the ensemble, and of course, shiny black high-heeled shoes. In short, she was the epitome of beauty. Realizing he was probably staring, Leo held out a bouquet of flowers to her before he spoke. "Wow, Clara, you look wonderful. Here, these are for you." Clara used this time to consider Leo, and she was pleased that she was able to give him the reaction she did. She had put a lot of effort into looking the way she did today, and she seemed to have succeeded admirably. "You look really good, Leo. I love that suit, and those flowers are beautiful. Please come in while I get a vase to put them in," Clara said, leading him into the living room and motioning for him to sit on the couch. When she saw that he was comfortably seated, she quickly took a vase from the kitchen cabinet, filled it with water, and placed the flowers in it. Then she returned and placed the vase on the coffee table in front of Leo. When she returned to the room, Leo stood there, metaphorically pinching himself. He still couldn't believe that this beautiful creature was the same woman he worked with every day. That's not to say she wasn't attractive at work, she was, but she obviously dressed down so as not to appear too attractive. Tonight, she didn't feel the need to do that, and the difference was striking. Glancing at his watch, Leo remarked that it was time to go if they were going to make their reservation. "I don't want to rush things, but we should get going, Clara." "Okay, I'll just grab my purse, and we can go," Clara replied. She grabbed her wrap from the back of the chair where it lay, and Leo helped her slip it over her shoulders. They left the apartment, and Leo waited for her to close the door before holding out his hand to walk her to the car. The ride to the restaurant was quick, and soon they were sitting at a table in a secluded corner. "This looks like a nice place, Leo. Do you come here often?" Clara asked, looking around appreciatively. "As a matter of fact, yes. I've been coming here for business meetings and such since they opened about a year ago. I really like the food and the privacy that the seating provides. I can have a business conversation without too much trouble as long as people aren't talking too loudly. You can't hear anything at the other tables," Leo explained. "I think the atmosphere here is very romantic," Clara said with a sly grin. "Well, yes, now that you mention it, it is quite romantic. I hope you approve," Leo said hopefully. "Oh yes, Leo, of course, I approve," Clara replied. At this point, the waiter came over, and after taking their drink orders, left them to study the menu. Returning with the drinks, he took their dinner orders and left as quickly as he had come. "You mentioned dancing after dinner, Leo. I haven't danced since Paul's retirement party, and I'm looking forward to it." "You're a very good dancer, if I remember correctly," Clara said teasingly. "The dancing here in the parlor starts at 9 o'clock, Leo said, pausing to study her other comment. "Has it really been that long? I apologize and promise you won't have to wait another 6 months before I ask you to dance again." "You can be sure of that," he grinned. "I'll hold you to that promise, Leo. I just love to dance." "Yes, so much so that you might regret this promise," Clara teased back. Leo smiled warmly at her and continued in a low voice, "I'll take my chances, Clara." His words sent a wave of desire running down her spine. Leo had never spoken to her like that before, and she loved it. She reached out and grabbed his hand, her eyes darkening as her desire for the man sitting across from her rose to the surface. Leo noticed the change in Clara almost as soon as the words left his mouth. He could almost feel the warmth radiating from her, and her eyes spoke of an unprecedented desire for him. Instead of being surprised at the depth of her feelings, he was pleased, and it fueled his desire for her. He hadn't felt this kind of desire in many, many years and found that he liked the feeling. For the first time since his divorce, he felt alive. Clara was giving vent to feelings that he had buried for too long, and he was enjoying letting them out again. All these feelings passed between them without words, and just as Leo leaned over to kiss Clara, the food arrived. Snapping out of the cocoon of desire they were in, they leaned back in their chairs, blushing, and began to eat. The conversation naturally died down during the meal, and after dessert, they headed into the lounge, taking a vacant table near the dance floor. Leo ordered a bottle of wine for them, and they sat down, waiting for the band to finish tuning up. Leo poured them both a glass of wine, raised his own glass, and proposed a toast. "To best friends," he said quietly, looking into her eyes. "To best friends," Clara replied with feeling, and they sipped their wine. They spent the entire evening dancing, enjoying the way they embraced each other. When the first song ended, Leo and Clara kissed for the first time. "Wow," she said, feeling stunned and unable to formulate a coherent thought. Leo smiled lovingly. "Yeah, wow. I was worried when I did it. Didn't want to embarrass myself because of my inexperience." "If that's inexperience, Leo, I don't think I'll be able to handle it when you get your sea legs again." "Thank you, Clara." Throughout the night, they spent more time on the dance floor than off it, but found plenty of time to finish a bottle of wine in between band performances. All too soon, the band leader announced that the next set would be their last, and they took advantage of that by dancing every dance. By the end of the evening, it felt like they had known each other forever and that they knew each other's bodies as well as they ever could with their clothes on. Given the heat they had radiated throughout the evening, Leo was beginning to worry that his resolve not to engage in intimacy tonight might be put to the test. Although he was quickly falling in love, or perhaps already had, with Clara, he still didn't want to rush into it. He didn't want her to think that he was just like all men and had only one thing on his mind. Oh, he wanted that too. He'd be a fool if he didn't. But he wanted her to know that he loved her for herself, not for her physical attributes. Again, trusting what he knew about Clara, he was sure she wouldn't insist on having her way tonight and relaxed as he realized that Clara, too, was pondering what to do next. It seemed to her that they had made tremendous progress today. She could feel Leo's desire in everything he did, especially the way he held her during the dance. However, she wondered if he wanted more now that she had unleashed his desire. She was expecting more too, but not tonight. She had never been the type to sleep with a guy on the first date, and she wasn't about to start doing it now. Knowing Leo, she was sure he would understand her reluctance to take that step tonight, so she relaxed as they walked slowly to her apartment, each immersed in their own thoughts and holding hands the whole way. When they parked in front of her building, Leo walked to the other side of the car and opened the door for her. "I hate to leave you, but if I don't, I'll do something we're not ready for right now. I've had such a good time, and I don't want to ruin it by going too far for a first date. I hope you don't mind, honey." Honey. He hadn't used any affectionate words before, but she liked it. She agreed with him and tried to reassure him. "I agree, darling. I've had such a wonderful evening, and it seems right to end it now." "Thank you for being everything I thought you would be, darling," Clara said softly. Leo feared she might object to his affection, but she not only accepted it but responded in kind. His heart raced as he realized he'd made the right choice today, and he was proud that she recognized it too. "I'll call you tomorrow, Clara, if that's okay," Leo said, his voice filled with warmth. "I'd like that, Leo, very much," Clara replied, her heart filled with happiness. He let go of her hands and turned to head home, and images of that night flashed through his mind until he fell asleep, dreaming of the best date of his life. Clara woke up early the next morning, remembering last night's date. It had gone better than she could have hoped. Considering that on Saturday, she and Leo were still only friends, at least officially, when she got home, she was so happy. She was so happy that she thought back to dancing with Leo. She headed to the kitchen, where she made breakfast while the coffee flowed into the coffee pot. While she ate, she tried to read the newspaper but gave up on it as the only thoughts in her head were the memories of the night before. Her musings were interrupted by the ringing of the phone. "Hello?" she asked, hoping it was Leo. "Good morning, Clara," came the smooth voice she was so anxious to hear. "How are you doing this morning? Did you sleep well?" "I slept like a baby, Leo. I'm glad you called early. I wanted to hear your voice," she said shyly. "I'm glad you said that because I was worried it might be too early, but I couldn't wait any longer," Leo responded, his voice filled with warmth. "I was wondering if you'd like to go on a picnic in the mountains today. I know a lovely meadow a short walk from the main trail. I'd love to show it to you." "A picnic in a meadow alone?" "Oh yes, I'd love to, Leo. How did you know I like walking in the mountains?" Clara asked, her excitement evident. "You mentioned it once, and I remembered when I was thinking about what to do today. The food is almost ready. I was just waiting for you to say yes before I finished everything. I can be there in about an hour. Is that okay with you?" Leo asked. "Oh, Leo, I could have made the food myself, but I appreciate the effort." "An hour is fine. I have a bottle of wine I can bring over if that's okay with you," Clara replied. "That would be fine. I don't have any wine in the house right now. I'll see you in an hour then." "Bye, honey," Leo said, feeling a warmth in his heart. "Bye, Leo. See you soon," Clara replied, her heart racing with anticipation. After that first date, the relationship between Leo and Clara grew rapidly. They spent most of their free time together, either at his house or hers, doing all the things a couple in love does in private. During this period of his life, Leo recognized himself and felt he knew Clara well, so the thought of marriage didn't immediately cross his mind. He picked out a ring he was sure she would like, but arranged with the jeweler to exchange it if necessary, and then made reservations at the restaurant where they had their first date. They were seated at the same table and chatted animatedly throughout the meal. After dessert, and before they were to move to the ballroom for dancing, Leo reached into his pocket and pulled out a small blue box. Kneeling down in front of her, he opened the box, looking her straight in the eye. "Will you marry me, Clara?" Leo asked, his voice filled with love and hope. Clara saw the beautiful ring glistening in the box, and her heart leapt in her chest. She had to swallow several times before she could find her voice. "Yes, oh yes, I'll marry you, Leo," Clara said, tears of joy streaming down her face. She threw herself around his neck, squeezing him so hard he thought she might break his neck. He took the ring out of the box and slipped it on her finger, where it fit perfectly. Their reverie was interrupted by the applause of the restaurant patrons sitting around them, which they acknowledged with blushing smiles. They made their way to the lounge, where a bucket of champagne, courtesy of the restaurant staff, stood at their table. The rest of the evening passed quickly, and they left early to continue the celebration at Clara's house. Leo woke up early that Saturday morning, the light from the window filtering through the shade. He replayed the last few months of his life in his head and still couldn't believe his good fortune. After the bleak years of his marriage and the dark years after his divorce, he never thought he would be so happy again. He felt truly blessed that love had found him twice in his life. But there was one thing that marred his happiness. He had to tell Maya of his engagement, and he didn't want to do that. He had to tell her in person. He was indebted to her after all they had been through together, and he felt that she still held out hope that someday they would be together again. She never said anything like that when they had occasional lunches or when he saw her at Tom and Sophia's receptions, but he saw something in her eyes that could be mistaken for hope, especially when she was talking to her sister and he could see but not hear them. He didn't want to hurt her with this news, but he also didn't want her to find out secondhand. It had to be done, and done as soon as possible. On Monday at work, Clara would be sure to tell her friends, and then the cat would be out of the bag. He sighed and continued to stare at the ceiling. Clara slowly woke up, looked at her left hand, and saw the ring Leo had put there last night. It still felt like a dream to her, and she didn't want to wake up. Turning her head, she saw the man beside her sigh and noticed that Leo was staring at the ceiling, clearly deep in thought. "Good morning, darling. Is something wrong?" she asked cautiously. Leo turned and saw his fiancée looking at him with concern on her face. He needed to dispel that look quickly. "No, darling, it's all right. I was just thinking about what I need to do. I had to tell Maya that we're getting married," he said softly. "Maya? Your ex-wife?" Clara asked with obvious curiosity in her voice. "Yes, I feel obligated to do so. We've been together for years, and she shouldn't have to find out through the grapevine. I'm just not looking forward to it. How do you tell your ex-wife you're getting remarried?" "Hey, Maya, congratulate me, I'm getting married." "I don't know what to say," he replied simply. "You're a good man, Leo. Most guys wouldn't think about their ex-wife's feelings at all. You'll think of something to present the news as gently as possible." "I know you will," Clara said, reassuringly. "Thanks for the vote of confidence, dear. I'm going to need moral support. I'll call her later today and invite her to lunch tomorrow if that's okay with you," Leo said, feeling a bit better. "Sure, no problem. You'll be with me for the rest of the day and the rest of our lives, so I can make time for you for lunch tomorrow. I think I'll invite Joy to lunch too. I don't think I can wait until Monday to show off," Clara said with a smile. "That's a good idea, Clara, but please ask Joy to keep quiet until Monday. I want to spend a quiet Sunday afternoon with you before all our friends find out. You know we won't have a moment's peace once the rumors start spreading. Speaking of which, do you have any preference as to when you want to have the ceremony?" Leo asked. "Geez, Leo, I haven't had a chance to think about it. You just proposed yesterday, and then we danced and partied all night. My mind has been busy," Clara replied, laughing. "Sorry, dear, I just thought I'd ask since it's crossed my mind. I figure the sooner, the better, so whatever works for you works for me," Leo said, grinning. "I'll think about it and let you know, dear," Clara replied, her heart full of love. It was 12:55 p.m., and Leo was sitting at a table in a fancy outdoor cafe, looking at his watch for the third time in the last 3 minutes. Time wasn't going fast enough for him. Just as he looked at his watch once again, the maitre d' directed Maya to his table. He stood up and pulled back a chair for her. Seating himself back down, he began, "Thank you for coming, Maya. I appreciate you meeting me on such short notice," he said more nervously than he would have liked. Maya saw the tension on his face, heard his voice, and became worried. Despite the separation, Maya still knew him well enough to realize he had something to say, and she was sure she wouldn't like it. Pulling a smile onto her face, she wondered what it could be. "No problem, Leo. You know I like our meals together," she said, deciding to get it over with as soon as possible. "You seem troubled about something, Leo. Is it something I did?" "No, Maya, you didn't do anything. There's something I need to tell you. I didn't want you to find out from someone else. I owe you." Leo paused, looked into her eyes, and took a breath to calm himself before continuing. "I'm getting married, Maya." Getting married? He's getting married, Maya thought. The last thing she expected to hear today was exactly that. As much as she tried not to admit it, she still had hoped that someday Leo would change his mind and come back to her. Sophia had said that more than once. Leo just needed to get over the pain she had caused him. Once he could get over it, he would start to miss her and realize how much she had changed, how much she had become like the woman he had married instead of the person he had divorced. Her hopes had risen a little after they resumed their friendship, even though Leo had been very detailed about the nature of that relationship. Now, however, her hopes crumbled at her feet, and she had to force herself not to cry. She had done this to herself. Worse, she had done this to him. She had hurt him so much that his love for her was not enough to overcome the resentment. Realizing that she had been silent for too long, she decided it was best to congratulate him, though doing so was the last thing she wanted to do. Reaching across the table, she placed her hand on his arm. "Congratulations, Leo. I'm happy for you. Who's the lucky girl?" Maya asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Leo could see that despite her calmness, Maya was upset, but he hadn't expected anything else. As he had suspected, she had harbored hope for their reconciliation, and now that hope had been killed. Even though he was happy with his situation, he still felt sorry for her. "Her name is Clara Can. She's the CFO at the medical center. We've been dating for a while now, and I felt it was time to move on, but not before I told you," Leo explained. "I appreciate your concern for my feelings, Leo. You've always worried about me, even when I didn't deserve it. You're a wonderful man, Leo, and my biggest regret is that I lost you through my own stupidity," Maya said, tears threatening to spill but refusing to cry. "When is the wedding, and will I be invited?" she asked with a fake smile. "We haven't set a date yet, and yes, you are invited if you want," Leo said softly. "I want to, Leo. I want to. You've been good to me all these years, and as your friend, I want to share in your happiness," Maya said sincerely. Leo had been curious about one thing for a long time, and now seemed like the perfect moment to satisfy that curiosity. "Maya, can I ask you a question? Admittedly, it's a bit personal. You can ask, but I might not answer. It all depends on how personal it is," Maya replied cautiously. "Fair enough." Leo paused and looked into her eyes, hoping she could see the sincerity in them. "Maya, why did you break off your engagement to that British man? I've always wondered about that. You looked happy in the picture in the paper." Of all the things he could have asked, that question was the last one she expected. Should she tell him? Yes, he deserved to know, especially after he'd taken special measures to think about her feelings. "It's complicated, Leo. I was overwhelmed at first. Trevor was very charming and opinionated. I'd met him a few weeks before at a party Sophia dragged me to. We'd been introduced to each other, and he seemed to have a crush on me and monopolized my time for the rest of the evening. We saw each other just about every day. He's rich, of course, so we ate at the best places, went to fancy parties, and he bought me some very expensive gifts. I was stunned, to say the least. Sophia also thought he was right for me and let me know that I'd be a fool to stop seeing him," Maya began, pausing to take a sip of water. "His proposal at that party was a complete surprise too. Everyone was congratulating me and seemed so happy for me that I didn't think too much about the situation before saying yes. It was at this time that the photographer took the picture that made it into the newspaper. Reality set in the next day. I didn't know Trevor that well. He was a very nice man, handsome, definitely a good catch, but I didn't love him. I hope this doesn't sound ridiculous, but I'd been in love once before, and that wasn't it at all," Maya continued, hanging her head and a shiver running through her body. Gaining courage, she lifted her head, squared her shoulders, and continued. "Once I realized that, the decision came easily to me. I called Trevor that day and told him I was sorry, but I couldn't marry him. He was devastated because he really loved me, fell in love at first sight. I told him I didn't have those feelings for him. He asked me if I thought I could love him and that he would wait for me. I was honest with him and told him that no, I didn't think I could love him, and it wouldn't be fair to deceive him. I made the excuse that I didn't want to move to England, as the subject hadn't come up before I said yes. But Trevor knew the truth. He left for England the following week, and I haven't seen him again since," Maya finished, her voice trembling. "I'm sorry to hear that, Maya. You deserve love too. I hope you find someone to love you soon," Leo said sincerely, squeezing her hand. "Thank you, Leo. That means a lot coming from you," Maya replied, her voice softening. Wanting to lighten the mood, Leo called for the waiter, and they continued their lunch as friends. Leo stood at the entrance to the church with Tom and waited for his fiancée to enter. He looked around at the crowd of friends and family who nodded in greeting as he caught their glances. He was surprised but pleased to see that Maya had brought a date with her. He didn't know how serious it was, nor did it matter. He thought it was a testament to Maya's progress that she was at least going on dates. His attention was drawn to the sounds of the wedding march in the back of the church. There stood his beautiful bride, hand in hand with her father. To the sound of music, she made her way toward him and their future. Leo's journey is one of profound transformation and resilience. From the depths of despair after his divorce to the joy of finding new love with Clara, his story reminds us that even in our darkest moments, there is always hope for a brighter future. As Leo and Clara embark on their new life together, they carry with them the lessons learned from past pain and the promise of a love that heals and endures. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey. We hope Leo's story has inspired you and touched your heart. Be sure to subscribe to Storytime Audio for more tales of love, loss, and the incredible strength of the human spirit. Until next time, keep believing in the power of new beginnings.